Let's begin. Welcome to the inaugural Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Leadership Summit. We are glad that you could join us on this day of professional learning meant to take family, school, community partnership to the next level. My name is Kristen Meek-Hennon, and I will be this session's moderator. In case you are wondering if you're in the right session, you have chosen session 3, Engaging Families to Launch Early Literacy. If you should have any questions during our time here or technical issues, please message me in the private chat. You can choose my name, Kristen Meek-Hennon, and I will try to assist you. It looks like we've got about 24 participants joining us so far. So to ensure that we get most of out of the day, we just ask that we will continue to have your webcams turned off and your microphones turned off. If you have any questions for the presenters, please use the chat feature and I will pass them along at appropriate times or in the end of their presentation. You can join us in the conversation on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag #LeadTheLaunch to share your thoughts. Now, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Meredith Wellman. Dr. Wellman is the project lead for the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center at The Ohio State University. So let's welcome Meredith. Meredith?
Hi, thank you for coming to our session, everyone. I just want to start by saying that teaching kids to read is an awesome responsibility. And because this session of the summit is about leading family engagement and literacy, today my co-presenters and I are going to share about building a strong system in schools to support family engagement in early literacy that's linked to learning and student outcomes. We have a handout that accompanies this session and that has several tools and resources on it that you can take away with you after the session. And that's on the summit website under our session materials. While we're getting started here, just to ground us all in what we're talking about, we'd like you to write in the chat box one word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear family engagement and early literacy. All right, so I see encouraging. We need to be encouraging. It's essential, absolutely. Library story time, community partnerships are really important. Thank you to Janet Ingram Dwyer for joining us from the Ohio Libraries. And let's see, what else? Empowering, costly, it can be costly. Yes, absolutely. So as Kristen said, I'm Meredith Wellman from the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Center at Ohio State University. In 2017, I worked closely with the director of our center, Dr. Barbara Boone, to write a manual for coaches to support schools in embedding family engagement and early literacy into their school system. And we called this Partnerships for Literacy. So far, we've piloted the tools and resources in 15 Ohio school districts and have a third cohort starting this year of 7 more districts. And those are 7 are all in rural districts in Ohio. Every regional state support team in Ohio has a coach trained in supporting schools to embed system-level processes and practices for family engagement in early literacy based on the work that you will hear about today. So today, our goal is not to train you to implement a program, but to really think about what it means to build a strong system that will support this work in your schools. I'm very grateful to be joined here today by 2 regional state support team coaches who are right in the thick of this work. Megan Horstmeier from Region 13 is coaching a school down in Cincinnati, and Missy Marsh from Region 15 is coaching Western Local School District, which is about an hour or so south of Columbus. So we have examples from an urban district and a rural district to share with you today. When we talk about family engagement, Michelle Brooks in her keynote talked about the importance of having a strong framework of families and schools and community partners to partner together to launch student success. So in 2017, as we were writing Partnerships for Literacy, We reviewed the research on what schools can do to support family engagement in early literacy. And we wrote the paper on the left that you see in red. And that same year, the Global Family Research Project wrote the paper on the right in blue, which focuses on what families do at home and in the community to support their kids' early literacy skills. So this infographic, which you see on the screen, which is a visual representation of the research from those two papers, zeroes in on what are the most impactful ways that families support early literacy every day, and how schools come alongside families to support these home-based practices. So let's just take a look at a couple examples on here of how dual capacity looks in the area of family engagement and early literacy. So that first one there on the left side, communicate positive expectations for families and children. So if that's what schools are doing, then it makes families' job stronger, and their job is to communicate high expectations for learning at home with their kids. The second example there, if families' jobs is really to make reading enjoyable, then what schools and community partners can do is to encourage families to have fun with language and literacy. When we talk about family engagement and early literacy, we also need to be talking about how we build our system to support these practices. So this conference is all about leading family engagement. So it's not just about individual teachers doing their practice differently, but whole schools making a shift in how they engage families. So what do we train schools to do to build their system? First, we encourage schools to have some focused discussions with their smaller school leadership team. So these prepare the school for inviting families to the table, and they encourage some introspection about what's going well and what isn't really leading to the outcomes that the school is desiring. So we encourage them to kind of pull out their literacy goals, to look at their school improvement structure, and to think about whether they really do have enough family voice at the table, et cetera, and what practices they're doing that may not be the most high impact practices. And they also begin to think about what a representative school team would look like that includes families, school staff, and community partners. Step 2 is that they're building a school team. So this team, we want to be representative. We want it to include maybe a school's literacy coach, families that represent the diverse array of families in their community. And often schools find a really important community partner to have on that team, or 2 or 3. The next step that we train coaches to go in and help schools to do is to inventory their practices. And I'll show you a little bit more about our inventory of practices in just a little bit. But that's step 3. So that the team that they built with family representation, community representation, and school representation walks through an extensive inventory of their current family engagement in early literacy practices. It's a very kind of focused process. Step 4 is that they, together as a team, create or redesign action steps that get embedded in their overall school plan for improvement. So this isn't a separate plan, it's part of the school's overall plan. Step 5 is that using some tools that we have, we trained coaches to implement and to help schools implement and track their action steps. So if you're familiar with school improvement processes, this really is the plan, do, study, act cycle. It's just we've broken it out into a few more steps. Step 6 is to review and re-inventory their practices, which typically happens in the springtime, and to celebrate their successes. It's really important to keep everyone motivated to do this work and focus on the importance and the why. And step 7 is that this process is meant to be sustainable. It's meant to be woven into a school system over time, so that, you know, it's not like this separate thing that schools are doing, but every year they sort of improve upon what they've done in the past and continue to re-inventory their practices, figure out what's working, and go from there. So step 3 of that process is for schools to inventory their current practices and come to consensus as a team, including families, on how to rate their current practices. So There's lots of different ways you can inventory your current practices, and you'll hear some examples from our coaches in a little bit. But our inventory that we came up with has 17 items that schools and families discuss, and it's across 3 big areas. And those 3 big areas are communication, supporting early language and literacy at home, and strategic community partnerships. So I just want to show a quick example of what this process looks like when the school teams, including Family Voice, are inventorying their practices. So on the screen, hopefully it's not too tiny and you can see it. For each section of the inventory, so you see that this is our first communication item. The first item, the big picture item, is that families are informed about their child's language and literacy progress in a timely manner. And so as you can see, there's that big picture item and then several guiding questions that walk teams through a discussion. And then after the guiding questions are possible sources of evidence. So our team has also collaborated with the state support teams in Ohio to develop a rubric and guide for school teams, which is on our website, and we can post a link to that. And the rubric is sort of freely available, the rubric and guide, and this will give you lots of ideas for inventorying your current school practices. So I want to just pause here for just a second and share with you that we are interested in sort of scaling up our partnerships for literacy training and coaching to more schools and districts. Right now, we are working on publishing it as a manual, and then it will be more sort of available than just the smaller cohorts we're working with right now. But today, you're going to get access to lots of tools and ideas that you can get started with right away, regardless of whether you are one of our districts partnering with us right now. Okay, so write in the chat, we want you to write in the chat who would be a few essential people to have on your partnerships for literacy team for your community or school. So thinking about having a representative team who could really inform this process of understanding what's going on, what's going well. Would you want to have teachers across some grade levels? Would you want to make sure that the families on the team represented different income levels or racial groups in your school community? Who would be some of those essential people on your school's team? All right, Henry says early literacy coaches, K-3 teachers, librarians, and active parents. Sure. Definitely encourage, Megan will talk in a little bit about how they've sort of encouraged, how they sort of recruited families into the table. Casey says that she wants it to start before K. Yeah, so as a parent of a 3-year-old right now, or almost 3-year-old, you know, it would be nice if the school that my kid was probably going to be in kind of reached out and supported me earlier before I got into the school system. So there's lots of parents out there curious how to support their kids at home, and getting them to the table and helping to understand how to set them up for success is a great idea. Okay, so keep adding to the chat who you want to have on your team, but I'm going to turn over the presentation to Megan Horstmeier from State Support Team 13 down in Cincinnati, and she's going to share about the action steps designed by the team at Pleasant Ridge Montessori in Cincinnati using the Partnerships for Literacy process. I think Megan's trying to unmute. Let me see if I can help with that. There we go. You've been made a co-host, so you should be able to unmute now.
It says I can't unmute. All right, sorry about that. Yes, my name is Megan Horstmeier, and I'm work with Region 13 down in the Cincinnati area. And this last couple of years, I've had the chance to work with Pleasant Ridge Montessori, which is one of CPS's elementaries. And what we really did was we redesigned what literacy at home activities looked like for the different grade bands. So we wanted to create a plan that had quick activities that parents could do with their students at dinner, in the car, on the way to practice, during family time. Something that wasn't just one more activity for families to have to do, or that kids had to do on their own and then, bring back to the school. We really wanted them to start talking about what they were learning in the classroom. So we felt that it was very important to engage in that conversation and have kids talking to their parents about what they were learning, and then parents being able to talk back about what they were learning and what the standards were. We didn't want parents to feel stuck into doing one thing. So if you send home one worksheet that the kids are doing on their own, there's no real conversation happening and parents are stuck doing that one worksheet. So we wanted to provide some choice and some differentiation in what the homework looked like in order to engage the families in the conversation and in the work. We also wanted to make sure that what we were sending home for the families to do was supporting what was happening in the classroom and where we were in the curriculum. And then it wasn't just one more thing to do, or that family engagement wasn't an additional thing to do with the families, that it was embedded into what was happening to the classroom, and what they were doing at home was supporting the classrooms, and what was happening in the classrooms was supporting that conversation at home. So we tied directly into that. So what we did as a school is we created, or the teachers created, a calendar. We called it a calendar, but really it's just a checklist or a list of activities that they could do. We asked them to select 2 or 3 a week, depending on what was going on in the week. And the parents just initialed that it had been completed. So as you can see what some of them are, they're things that you could do at the grocery store, in the car, at the dinner table. And they allowed the parents to have a conversation with their child about what was happening in school. So when the kids came home, they're like, what happened in school today? And nothing, like that conversation didn't have to happen. They could ask them based off of what the calendar said. I see that you're learning about the M sound today. Do you see anything in our kitchen that starts with that M sound? And so they could really engage with good conversations about the curriculum with their students based off of this activities. And then the students got a little like sticker or button for every activity that they completed, so they could kind of brag about how many activities they had gotten done. So this checklist worked well for us. There are other examples out there. You can go ahead and click one more time. Here's a resource that we use to kind of get activities. We wanted to make sure that the activities aligned to where we were in the classroom, where we were in the curriculum. So we kind of picked and chose different months and years, what they had listed, but this is Reading is Fundamental, and it really helps come up with some ideas. So when you're stuck because you want to come up with a good list, there's several resources, and they are in your resource guide that's that's linked to this session. But that allows you to kind of see what it is, different ideas and topics that are out there, and where to kind of get started. So you could do a calendar like this. We did a checklist so parents had a choice. If they had a really busy Tuesday, they chose to do something they could do in the car on Tuesday. But if they had more free time on Thursday, they could maybe do one that took a little more sitting down with some paper and pencil, things like that. So go ahead and move forward.
I just want to mention that one remarkable thing about what Cincinnati did is that they actually used these activities to replace the traditional homework that was sent home. So it wasn't an additional thing for the teachers or for the families. It was a replacement of homework practices that they maybe weren't as excited about having kids do.
Yes, thanks for that. So what we did is we wanted to make sure that, we all know that they go home, they do homework, and they practice things that aren't correct. It doesn't really help them, and it actually harms what they're learning in the classroom. So by having them just engage in conversation and talk to their parents, and their parents talking to them, it was reinforcing what you were learning at home, but it wasn't necessarily having them learn something new or to practice something new. They were just talking about it. So what we found was that it was very important to create a balanced team and to make sure that all voices that were necessary were on this team when we're talking about partnerships for literacy. So we had 3 parents. Montessori is broken into grade bands or age bands. And so we had 1 parent from each age band. We had 3 teachers, 1 from each age band, a reading specialist, an administrator, our regional family engagement coach, and then our regional early learning literacy specialist. And when we were creating this team, we wanted to make sure that we were having a variety of voices that were at the table. You know, sometimes it's hard to get people who are not normally engaged. And we didn't want the same parents that were engaged in everything. When we planned out our meetings, we made sure that we were right before the time that the PTA was meeting. So whatever we decided or came up with, we could take to the PTA and take to the BLT and make sure that what we were doing was aligning with all the rest of the building plan and where they were headed. But we also found that really important because we didn't want the same parents that were, you know, serving on every other committee to be in this committee, because we wanted them to be able to give us some fresh ideas and to really say, is this going to work in every family's lives, or is this going to work and able to incorporate this into what, you know, parents are doing at home. And so by getting a variety of voices, we were able to feel like more people could take ownership and really enjoy these activities, opposed to just sitting down and making their kids do homework. In order to do that, we had them send out personal invitations. We had them call. We had, you know, every teacher kind of reach out to different parents and see if they were involved in this and to get some input. So, you know, really reaching out to those parents that you may not see a lot, but that you know have some good ideas, or parents who may feel comfortable talking to you, but don't come to the PTA or to other family events, reaching out to them and being like, we really need you to be a part of this. To schedule those meetings regularly. So we always scheduled them before the PTA so we could take whatever things we created or decided to the PTA to make sure that they agreed that it would be useful and helpful, and to get some feedback from a larger group of parents. We also made sure that it was convenient for parents to be there, and all team members. So in order to do this, we always had like the children be able to stay after school. We did it right after school because that worked for our team, but making sure that, you know, if parents are working, it doesn't count them out of being involved in this. I really think with Zoom and all the different virtual options now, we can really broaden how parents can engage in these committees. But we allowed the kids to stay and do their homework and trying to read books and stay in the classroom that was adjoined to where we met, in order to allow parents to not have to figure out childcare and things like that. But yeah, we also sent notes home to individuals that could not attend. So if you missed a meeting because something came up, which, you know, definitely happens, especially with people in the school and the family, we made sure that they had the notes and they knew what was going on, what was decided, so the next meeting could be productive and we could really move forward. So effective practices that we had learned is that we really need to listen to our parents. So, you know, as educators, we know what we want them to learn, and we know, you know, what good homework looks like. But if we're not listening to our parents, there's a good chance that those kids are doing that on their own at home and may not be really reinforcing what we need to do. So listening to them and what is doable at home and what is helpful and what helps the parent know what's going on at school. Because the more that everybody's informed, you know, the further that we can move along the curriculum. Keep it attainable. So we learned this as a hard lesson. The first year, our plan to engage parents in literacy was huge. We had all kinds of events planned, all kinds of things to send home and do. And we really realized that that was overwhelming for both parents and for the people on the team. So we kept it, we had to scale back the second year, and we just started with those calendars. And once we got really good at those calendars, we're now ready to move forward into step 2 and add some other things. But start smaller and really get good at things and listen to your parents and do the research and see what's working. It's okay to start smaller and master something and then to grow it from there. But if you try to take on too much, it fizzles out and the team members get burnt out and the families get burnt out. So keeping it obtainable is important. You know, keep it focused on what you're trying to do. And our goal was to get students talking to their families about literacy and parents being engaged in a conversation about what was happening at school. So we had to keep going back to that to make sure that what we were doing was geared towards that, and it wasn't going off to just, you know, plug another literacy focus or plug something that was happening. That we wanted to keep the conversation going at home about what was going on in the classroom. Then I think it's always important, I talked about this for a second, but is to connect to other teams. What's happening, you know, with PBIS and their family engagement part, what's happening with the BLT, what's happening with the PTA, and how are you getting what you're doing to those other groups so that things aren't being overlapping, or that their parents aren't being sent home too many things at once. So we worked really hard with our teachers to, you know, make sure that the plan was flexible and that parents could do it at their own time and own pace, and that they weren't being overwhelmed with too many things coming home or too many assignments at once for all their different children if they had multiple children in different grade bands. So now I want to turn it over to Missy Marsh from Region 15, so she can tell you a little bit about how her school went apart implementing P4L.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, so I just wanted to add on to the balanced team. Western ended up having a lot of unique community partners that we felt needed to be part of our Partnerships for Literacy team. We housed a Head Start, a couple classrooms in our buildings. So we felt that it was extremely important to have them as part of our team. We also are a very small community in Latham, Ohio, in Pike County, so on the foothills of the Appalachian. So we really use our local library a lot to partner and to get families and students reading a lot there. So we invited them to be a part of our team as well. So we did have a pretty unique team. We also felt that it was extremely important to have grandparents on our team, because we do have a lot of students who are being raised by their grandparents. So that was another important team member. So we did go through the 4 focus discussions where we went around the foundational frameworks behind the family engagement, just to give that base knowledge. And then we also worked on the redesign, and that's part of the 4 focus discussions. I think that was a really big turning point for our team as well. What I had them do during the 4 focus discussions, I created a template, and they kind of did a brain drain of all of the different activities that they completed as a team or as a district, as a school building, what's happening, how are they engaging families. So that kind of included, you know, their different parent nights, open house, their literacy activities. So we did talk about that. So they developed this list, and then we came back the next meeting, and I asked them to go ahead and discuss, you know, which events are two-way communication, which events support language and literacy, which events involve a community partner, and then which events are school-wide. So that was a really powerful thing for them to see how many of their events did they actually have across the board, and how many of those events only covered 1 or 2 areas. Are you really getting your bang for your buck there? So we took one of our events and we redesigned it. And that was a very powerful moment, because, you know, they have all these wonderful events that they're doing, and they realize that, you know, we're not asking you to change those events as far as like completely throwing them out and doing something new. We're asking you to redesign it and think about how you can truly engage parents. Think about access. How are parents going to get there? What are you going to do for those parents who can't come because they need childcare, or they may not be able to understand everything that you're presenting? So how are you going to present it in a family-friendly way, be engaging, and allow them to be a part of this? So then we ended up going on from that to our early literacy inventory with all of our partners, including our parents. And we felt that we needed a little bit more information. So we decided to do a Google survey and just ask more parents about some of these big ticket items that are within the literacy inventory. So it kind of gave us a better feel about how our parents feel about our family engagement activities and events, and then what do they want? What would they be interested in having? What format would they want it in? So just to get a little bit more information. I think, you know, yes, Meredith talked about earlier how you don't have to be a part of this pilot and partnership right now. There are still things that you can do as programs and as districts to work on this family engagement piece. And as we discussed earlier in the presentation, we're forming a team. We're making a list of what we do and how we do it. We redesign it, survey your families, and then make that plan and stay focused on that plan. So it is definitely attainable to be able to do this without the resources that we used. There are ways that you can do it. The biggest takeaway for our Western team, we wanted to have more opportunities for families to participate in training and other literacy initiatives. So what we meant by that is that, yes, we had these literacy nights, but they were all based on the students just participating in activities, and it didn't fully engage our parents and empower them to do the work in the home. So we wanted to just kind of redesign how we did that and provide them those trainings. So we could still have that fun activity and literacy night, but how could we get parents more involved to where they could be doing these activities with their kids in the home, and they would be comfortable doing those activities with their kids in the home. So the biggest thing that P4L has allowed us to improve is communicating well with families, supporting learning at home, and then collaborating with our community partners. So
Thank you so much, Missy, for and Megan, for sharing about the work that you're doing in your schools. Feel free to pop in the chat any questions for Missy and Megan. And also, if you want to share kind of something you learned today using the using the prompt, I used to think, but now I think this. So we're so glad you joined us today. I'm going to let Missy and Megan stay in the room here, and I'm going to head over to the next session. I'm moderating one at 11:30. So we're going to have them stay and answer a couple questions, and then we will go from there.
thank you, Meredith.
Thanks, Meredith.
And here is the handout that we were talking about that has links to lots of things from today.